So it wasn't really anything or any specific experience or me going to the doctor or anything like that that got me a diagnosis. I wasn't diagnosed until like 2018.
Hi everyone, welcome back to Take a Pain Check. Today's episode is a powerful conversation about chronic pain, caregiving, advocacy, and finding purpose through lived experience. Estella, thank you so much for being here. Can you tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yes, thank you for having me. I'm really excited to be here to share a little bit about my journey, but also to share about what we do. So I am Estela Mata. I am co-founder and president of Looms for Lupus, a nonprofit organization that was formed by my sisters and I in 2012. And we support, raise awareness, bring advocacy, educate, and most importantly, collaborate with other organizations for those living with lupus and autoimmune conditions and overlapping conditions. So I'm excited to be here today.
Thank you for sharing. So you've lived with pain since the age of 15. What do you remember most about those early days before you had those answers?
Wow, that's one thing that I don't get asked a lot because obviously, I'm always advocating for others, always advocating for my sister, supporting. But yes, one of the things that I remember most really from early on is living with pain, but not really questioning living with pain. If so, I was a very active teenager, one of seven kids. My dad had a soccer team. And so we were always very active. So for me, anytime anything hurt, like my legs hurting, my arms, or anything, it was really about what am I doing? Am I too active? My dad used to coach the soccer team. So there's always, there were always people like that would get bandaged up, that would get creams and lotions and potions applied to their pains and aches. So that's what I learned. So I would think, okay, associating this pain to me being active. And so not having medical insurance or anything like that, I never really went to my parents and said, hey, something hurts, take me to the doctor. It was more like, okay, something hurts, let me go apply this cream, let me do this, and just kind of lived with it. So I pushed through by like just treating myself really with what I thought would help, and that would be it. And then by the next day, if it continued, I would do it again. But other than that, like never really thought meant anything of it. And I think I normalized it almost.
Honestly, that is super similar to my story a little bit, in the sense that when I first experienced pain, my parents told me to wrap my finger with like a band-aid, thinking it would go away. And then after a couple weeks, it wasn't going away. And then my friend was like, you need to go to the doctor. But the first thing was like, okay, how can we prevent this at home? Or like, how can we make sure that it's okay? By seeing what we can do at home, and then like we maybe don't even have to go to the doctor because it might not be as serious. So I think it's something common that a lot of patients do is trying to see what they can do to first solve it and then going to the doctor.
Yeah, especially because it's not like a visible, it's not like a fracture where you can see something's broken or where it doesn't stop you like from, walking or doing things. I mean, even it would stop me because I would lay down at times, but it wasn't like something visible. You weren't bleeding or anything like that. So it's something that you could just, kind of sweep under the rug, if you will.
So for you, what led you to that chronic pain diagnosis, or do you see any chronic pain specialists, or is that just a symptom of like your fibromyalgia and rheumatoid arthritis?
I really did not seek any doctors. Like I said, early on, I really never talked to my parents about it. So for me, it was more about listening to my body, like figuring out like what was hurting. So if my like rib cage is probably the most painful because that my mobility with my shoulders, with my arms and all of that would hurt. So I would just listen to my body. If I knew that I was in a lot of pain, then I would take it easy. If I knew that, my legs were like giving out on me, like I would lay down, bandage them, apply the creams and stuff like that. So it wasn't really anything or any specific experience or me going to the doctor or anything like that that got me a diagnosis. I wasn't diagnosed until like 2018. And
Wow.
I don't know if I answered the question because with fibrofog also, and I'll say it, you can start like I don't really remember your question. And I know I started talking and then, I just go and then I kind of like have that fibrofog, which is very common, not just with those living with fibromyalgia, but also the brain fog. So a funny thing, funny stories is sometimes when my sister and I are talking and we might lose track of what we're talking about. And she'll ask me, well, what were you saying? And I'm like, I don't know. I don't remember. So she'll get the lupus fog and she also has fibro. So lupus, fibro fog. And then with my fog, we're a hot mess, but it's a good mess to have when someone understands what you're going through.
Yeah, I mean, you brought it up a little bit, but you said that your sister lives with autoimmune diseases as well. Can you tell me like what that timeline was and how have you supported each other? What was that journey like?
Yeah, so my sister actually was diagnosed in 2009. She was diagnosed with rheumatoid arthritis. And then, right shortly after that, she was diagnosed with lupus. So that's really what almost took her life. So she went in, she was having a lot of symptoms. So I didn't see her with a lot of the symptoms early on until 2009 when, a lot of things were visible where she couldn't really move, where she was having severe joint pain and her hands would, she would wake up with cramping. She would have to soften her muscles in order and her joints to be able to open her hands. And then, the rashes on her face and all of that. So before all of that, before 2009, I don't remember ever seeing her or hearing her complain. Now, I think culture has a lot to do with that, and I'll share that with you. My sister is the oldest of seven. So she used to always take care of us. So if our parents were busy, or, she was like the second person in line to take care of us. So she never complained. And so, I never would have known, even if she would have been having pain, that something was wrong. And that's kind of like in our culture, we don't really talk about pain. We don't complain. We have chores. We have to take care of the siblings. We have to take care of, help the parents. So we never really complained. So early on, I don't remember or recall her ever complaining. It wasn't until 2009 when she almost lost her life to what we know now was lupus attacking her platelets that I kind of came in the picture. And it was because we were really close. And I have worked in healthcare, so I knew that she shouldn't leave the provider's office without an answer. And she was really sick. And it was because of her advocacy and a little bit of my knowledge that helped her get that diagnosis. And because of that, she was diagnosed with lupus. Her platelets were at 2. And so she's alive today because of that.
Oh, thank you for sharing that. I feel like, you know, even having a responsibility because I didn't know. I thought it was just you and your sister. I didn't know you had seven. You were seven of you. Is everyone else healthy? Does it kind of like run in the family that you have autoimmune diseases?
Well, actually, so there are 7 siblings, and then my mom, as and my dad, they were like, we learned caring for others and giving back because of them. So we would always see them, taking care of everyone else. So they took in my first cousin, so that made 8 of us, and also my mom's younger sister, so my aunt
Wow.
also was raised with us. So there were 9 of us. So we were a huge family. And, autoimmune diseases, we didn't know what an autoimmune disease was. The only thing I remember is knowing that like my grandparents were diabetic, right? And that's about it. We knew like later on that a few of my sisters, including Juana, had hypothyroidism. So it's, and that's an autoimmune disease. We didn't know that. And we just thought, okay, it's something, regulating their weight or their hormones or something like that. We never knew it was an autoimmune disease. And fast forward to, your question about, are we healthy? Knowing now and understanding how autoimmune diseases run in our family, we actually have been having autoimmune diseases in our family. So our first cousin died at the age of 15 with diabetes or juvenile diabetes or diabetes 1, which is an autoimmune disease. So she died when she was 15. And two of my sisters have hypothyroidism. So that's like thyroid issues. And they take medication every day to maintain that. Also, in my mom's side of the family, there was always a very chronic anemia. And so there's no diagnosis there, but that's the linkage that we kind of associate like all of this chronic anemia that some of my sisters have, sickle cell trait that one of my sisters has, and then the autoimmune diseases. There's a few of my sisters that have positive ANA. Two of them have lupus and and then a few of us with other autoimmune diseases. So there is a familial linkage, and there are so many, I think, families that probably don't even know that it runs in their family. And I think that's important to talk about these. When you go to the doctor and they're asking you about your history, your family history, it's important for you to know not just about is there cancer in your family? What types of cancer? Did someone die because of that specific condition? At what age did they die? Is there autoimmune diseases? What types of autoimmune diseases? Is it from your dad's side of the family, your mom's side of the family? If you're adopted, the importance of you finding out what you carry or what genes or traits you carry. All of that is important. And it's not just the doctors are not asking you because they want to run these crazy tests and take your money, because that's what a lot of people think. Like, I'm not going to tell the doctor because it's going to cost me more. No, it is about your health. They are asking you because that will help them give them answers to how to treat you. And I think we can probably have a lot of little mini podcasts, about this, but short answer, yes, there's autoimmune diseases in my family. Yes, many of us have it. Some of us have been diagnosed, and some of us still have no diagnosis, but have like positive ANAs in our family.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, that must be a lot. And I mean, you definitely have support within your family, as I can see. And I wonder, with your rheumatoid arthritis and fibromyalgia, how did your medication journey look like? And is that something that you're still on different medications?
I have been around so many people with different autoimmune diseases. There's not one alike, there's not two alike. And so everyone has their own journey and everyone deals with their treatments differently and always advocating for yourself. So for me, with fibromyalgia, when I was diagnosed in 2018, I tried a few treatments, but they didn't really work for me. And also, some side effects made me realize that my pain levels would be better off than having these extra side effects. So I made the decision of not taking a few treatments because of the side effects, and they weren't really helping me with fibromyalgia. So with fibromyalgia, my treatment is more acupuncture, tissue massages. Even though it does cause a lot of pain, it also causes me to have a little bit of relief. I do a lot of stretches. So I do a lot of those kinds of things. I do a lot of mental health, self-awareness, self-care. And I also incorporate different types of diets. So I don't like diet crazy. I'm the first one to say that. But if I do notice a lot of inflammation, I do reduce a couple of, some of my food intake. Not a specific diet, but that helps. As for my rheumatoid arthritis, totally different story. I had to go different routes. I have tried, pills, I've tried infusions, and I will say not a lot has helped me. I've tried infusions and they were actually causing me more harm. And again, infusions can help many people, but we also have to be mindful on the side effects and we have to keep track. And that's why it's so important for us to advocate for ourselves, to track our symptoms, to track our side effects. Even if it's something small, track it and talk to your provider. I had to stop my infusions because it was causing me a lot of harm. Not to say the infusions are bad. Infusions are great for a lot of people, but you have to make sure that you understand what treatments you're taking track your symptoms, see if it's making it better, see what's making it worse, and then together with your provider, find a treatment that's right for you.
It's not
Uh-huh.
just the medication, but you've tried some other things that work for you, and it seems like different things work for different people, as we know. And so I'm glad you've
Right.
been able to figure that out for yourself. Mental health is very central to your work. And so, how has chronic illness impacted your emotional well-being over the years?
One of the things that we've realized is, and right when my sister was diagnosed with lupus, a life-threatening autoimmune condition that had no cure in 2009, that had no FDA-approved treatments, it affected her not just physically, but also emotionally. And that was one of the things that we learned from the beginning is we need to help support the individual with not just the tools to empower them to advocate for themselves when they're going to the doctor, when they're having their treatments, but also, the impact that these conditions have on an individual's life. And my young kids, and she had us as a family. So it affected her emotionally. And so loom knitting for her was a way to cope. And loom knitting is a way to like knit. So think of it as like art therapy. And, back then it wasn't cool to talk about wellness or art therapy and stuff that's how we kind of started talking about and incorporating art therapy, different, management techniques on managing your stress levels, art therapy, painting, um, all of that. Why did we do that? Because we knew that an autoimmune or chronic condition affects your whole body. And no one was really thinking about that. And I remember people would laugh at us and say, why don't you just focus on lupus? Don't focus on everything else and wellness and knitting. And we would say, but it's all together. And just looking at my sister, she is a social worker by trade. So, and she's a mother of she was a mother of two kids. It was affecting her. It was affecting her kids. She wasn't able to take care of her kids when she was in ICU. She wasn't able to work her caseload when she was in ICU. She wasn't able to function when she was fighting for her life, and it was affecting her mentally and physically. It was affecting her husband. It was affecting us. And so conditions like autoimmune diseases, like chronic pain, affect our daily lives. And so mental health is part of that is affected. So we need to continue to not only advocate for our, treatments for our physical health, but also for our emotional health.
You and your sister have definitely been through a lot, and you've worked on mental health. Can you talk a little bit about mindset shifting? Like, I think when I was diagnosed, especially, I felt like, my life is over. I won't be able to do anything. I can't achieve the goals or dreams that I want. So, did you feel any sort of way in terms of that? Because I know you mentioned, your sister couldn't do some of those things that she wanted to do. So, how did you all overcome this?
One of the things that we realized at the beginning is being diagnosed with lupus, with a chronic condition that had no cure, it was going to impact the rest of her life. So we needed to figure out how we were going to help her, and she needed to figure out how she was going to continue to not only live, but to continue to thrive for herself and for her children, right? So for us, it was more about like, what can we do? Well, one thing we cannot do, because we didn't know what we could do, but we knew we could not lose hope. Losing hope was giving up, and we didn't want to give up. So the one thing we wanted to do was learn about the condition, learn about potential treatments. If there weren't any, what else can we do? How can we help her? How can she help herself? And how can we raise awareness about this condition so no one else has to go through what she went through? How can we empower individuals to take charge of their health and advocate for themselves to get an early diagnosis and not get irreversible damage? So how could we do that? And we knew we could not give up. And so one of my younger sisters, she's a detective, and she came up with a slogan that has helped us kind of just keep moving. And it is never give in, never give up, never let go, just keep fighting. And that's really what we continue to do.
So, can you tell me a little bit about how mental health has played a central role to your work and how your chronic illness has impacted your own emotional well-being over the years?
Mhm. So mental health is very important. So one of the things, we realized is having an autoimmune condition or a chronic condition, life-threatening condition can impact you not just physically, but also mentally. So we wanted to not only get the information about the specific condition, treatments, but also how we can help relieve a lot of the things that were going to cause those flares. So with fibromyalgia, with lupus, we always see flares. So keeping our bodies in a calm state versus a fight or flight mode, I think is very important. And mental health is very important when we're talking about that. So making sure, you're taking care of your body, making sure you're taking time away, making sure that you're doing the things that you love to do emotionally, I think will take you off that fight or flight mode and cause those flare-ups with these conditions.
Yeah, I think coping is so important and finding ways to do that. And I'm glad that you've been able to find some ways to help other people. But for yourself, what are some strategies that you use to help your own mental health? And what coping mechanisms do you have for yourself?
I'll tell you, it's so interesting because we incorporate a lot of these different modalities within our support group. I mean, one of the reasons why we are Looms for Lupus is because my sister started loom knitting as a form of art therapy to relieve, her nerves and just to calm herself down. For me, I've tried yoga. So we've done yoga during our support groups. I'm not good with yoga. So you have to find your own way. So yoga not good for me because one, I cannot stay quiet, and yoga you need to be quiet and stretch. That's number one. And I'm not going to incorporate like any goats or cats or anything into my yoga. So yoga didn't work out for me. Journaling is something that worked for me. So we did a lot of journaling. So that's one of the things that have helped me to kind of calm my mind and get my emotions, outflowing. Art therapy, so a lot of like mandala coloring. We've done a lot of painting. That also is my way of soothing. Doesn't work for everyone because not everyone likes to color. Not everyone wants to stay in a quiet area. Um, Also, the I think it's called um, grounding, where you kind of utilize different mindfulness techniques. So I like to be barefoot. I like to go outside and just feel the grass and use all my senses. So I'm like feeling the grass, I'm smelling the roses, I'm feeling the wind, I'm hearing the birds. That for me is the best therapy. So you have to find whatever works for you to ease your mind. So whether it's running, some people like to go running, some people like boxing, some people like yoga, some people like Tai Chi. Anything that is going to bring you to that calm state, I think is very important, knowing your body, knowing what works for you. So mental health is very, very important.
Thanks for sharing those techniques. I'm sure it'll be helpful for anyone that's listening. They can try something new out. And a lot of the work that you do also talks about relationship with the body. Can you talk a little bit about, how that came to be and why you're so interested in that topic?
Yes, you have to know what works for you, especially with autoimmune conditions. There are no two people alike. And I think with just any condition, my fibromyalgia is very different from my daughter's. So whatever works for her might not work for me. And so I think kind of understanding your body and what your body's asking you for. So seeing those red flags. So am I losing a lot of hair? Am I, not being able to sleep? Am I feeling more achy today? Like, what caused it? Did I overwork myself yesterday? Am I dealing with a lot of stress? Did I not have a good sleep? So you kind of have to see what triggers a lot of your flares. Listen to your body. Listen to when you need to rest, and allow yourself to to rest. Give your body a break. So massages for me, they relax me. I love it. But for some people, they don't like it. So you have to find ways that nourish your body in that way. So also with nutrition, I don't follow a specific diet. So if my body is reacting because I had, like, let's say Chinese food yesterday, there was a lot of MSG, there's a lot of sodium. Today I'm swollen. I know not to have that. Or maybe if I am going to have that, have a little bit less of it. Or maybe, now since I had that yesterday, today I'm going to go like do some cleansing, like do some juicing, do some, extra walking. So kind of knowing to read this, how to read the signs and giving your body what it needs. Extra rest, better nutrition, stretching, exercise, just listening to your body.
How do you practice self-compassion during flares or difficult days?
Self-compassion, um, gosh, I'm still working on that. I really have to work more on being empathetic to myself and my body, um, and treating my body more like I would treat others because I'm always doing for others, always taking care of everyone, trying to get everyone to be happy and outgoing and making fun, everything fun for everyone. So I have to be more compassionate to myself. And I think I'm learning how to do that. I learned to say no. So I started saying no. So just being more compassionate with my body, learning to take care of it more than utilizing and being always on the go.
We've talked a little bit about Loops for Lupus, but and you introduced it at the beginning, but can you tell me a little bit about, what started in particular, and then what do you offer to patients?
Yeah, so Looms for Lupus was born by my two sisters and I. So once Juana was diagnosed with lupus, almost lost her life, we wanted to support the individuals once diagnosed, and we also wanted to support their families. So raising awareness was very important across the board with everyone in the community before they got any irreversible damage. So raising awareness is a big pillar. Another one is advocating. So advocacy across the board, not just advocating for yourself when you're going to the doctor, but also advocating for better health when it comes to policies. We wanted to support everyone. We wanted to support the individual. We wanted to support the family members, the loved ones, the children. So we incorporate all of that. We also wanted to empower the individual with tools. So, educating them on different ways that they can track their symptoms, educating them on different ways that they can prepare for their visits, educating them on different treatments and different modalities, educating them on mental health. And basically, when we're talking about Looms for Lupus and what it offers support, it raises awareness about the condition. It also advocates for the individual, their loved ones, and everyone impacted. Anyone really need access to equitable healthcare. And then the most important also is education and awareness. So very, very important things. And those are the things that we offer. We have support groups every month. We offer them bilingual. They're English and in Spanish. There are virtual and in person. So we have people connecting with us, from Mexico, from Lima, from Peru, from all over the world. And I think it's so important to stay connected because support groups, you get to learn, you get to share, but most importantly, you feel supported and you feel seen and heard.
So when you're doing them in person, how does that work versus online?
Oh, we actually do hybrid. So we do both. So before the pandemic, we were only in person. So, it was like obviously a smaller community. We are located in Baldwin Park, California, so close to LA, Los Angeles. So we would only, be catering to our communities. When the pandemic hit, the silver lining is the fact that we learned how to connect virtually. So our support groups are international. So we are able to connect with everyone. So the way they work right now is we have monthly support groups. So whoever wants to come in person, they're able to come in. We set up the videos, and then we have a camera that will spotlight everyone in the room. So if you're joining virtually, you get to see everyone that's in the room. In the room, we get to see everyone that's logged in virtually. So, and then we just go around in a circle like we would if we were in person or if we were all on the screen. We go around, we do check-ins, we have different topics, we do different activities. Like we just closed our year end and we played bingo. And the bingo I kind of created, well, with the help of AI, we were able to play bingo and we kind of, I used like a lot of words for gratitude and gratefulness and, things that just bring you hope and joy. So it was really fun. And we were able to do it with the people that were virtual and also the people that were in person. So it works fabulous.
That's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. And a great resource for people who may be interested or able to attend any of this. I'll definitely link a lot of that information in the caption below. So you've also worked with research programs and policy leaders. Can you talk about why patient representation is so critical in these spaces? I mean, I know why it's important, but as a patient and someone who also works in sort of this like healthcare field, why is this so important?
Us as patients, we're representing our different communities, and it really matters. It matters because, when we are joining with legislators, policymakers, they need to hear from our stories. They need to hear and have conversations with the patients, how all of these policies and all of these conditions impact our lives. They need to be able to see the challenges, right?
What do you wish decision makers better understood about chronic pain and autoimmune disease?
Wow. I really wish the decision makers understood that chronic pain and autoimmune diseases in general affect us all differently, right? Like we were talking about, everyone is so unique. And that it impacts not just our physical bodies or physical health, that it impacts our mental health. It impacts our daily routines. It impacts our families. It impacts our communities. I work in healthcare and I also work in the community a lot. So if I'm sick, if I'm not well, guess that it affects the community. It affects my children, my husband, my work. My sister is a social worker by trade. It affects her, her children, her grandchildren, the cases that she works, right? So it's very, very important. So I wish that the decision makers and policy makers understood that also that our conditions are not in our heads, right? These conditions are real, they're complex, they are invisible at times, and they shape our lives every day. Sometimes there are good days, sometimes there are bad days. And I think once we start understanding what it's like to live with an autoimmune or chronic condition or with pain every day, I think our policymakers will better understand what our needs are and create policies and support systems that really will reflect what our needs as their constituents, what our needs are and what we need to continue to thrive every day.
Yeah, for sure. And I think patient voices are really important, and just kind of listening to what we've been through is so important because then they can ensure their work is relevant when they're working on healthcare policies and things like that. How has building community through Looms for Lupus impacted your own health?
So, building community through Looms for Lupus has been a huge part of my healing because I wasn't diagnosed with fibromyalgia until 2018 and with rheumatoid arthritis until 2024. So, having this long journey and doing all of this with my sister, having so many being dismissed at the beginning, then fighting for treatments, then participating in clinical trials, having her ups and downs, having some providers believe her, some of them not so much, feeling supported, others supporting her, others not. It's been like a huge journey for her. So for me, being able to support her has also allowed me to know what's to come and how to face my own challenges. So, she trusted her body, she listens to her body. I saw that in her, so I'm doing that for myself. She advocates for herself. She knows her numbers, so she knows what her numbers are. She knows when she's flaring, and she shares that with her providers. That has helped me also with my journey. So, I think a lot of the things that I saw my sister go through have helped me, but also during our support groups, we facilitate the support groups ourselves. So my sister and we touch different topics, from, having a relationship with someone, with having, children, with being able to cope with it, a condition and working. So I'm able to learn from everyone, but they're also able to learn from us. So supporting patients, supporting caregivers, loved ones has helped me heal as well and navigate my journey.
Yeah, I feel the same. I think even through these conversations, it's super helpful for me to hear from you because I learned so much. And then also when we have our youth support programs, like learning from other youth helped me because, I still am learning how to navigate school, work, things like that. And so doing this work for other people is also so rewarding for myself. So I'm like, I'm pretty sure you feel the same way and you do. So it's just great to hear that, everything that we're doing for everyone in the community is not only helping others, but also helping us grow in our own journeys.
Yes, and I'm going to add something, and my daughter's okay with me sharing. My daughter is 23 right now, and she used to come along and help, voluntold. We always say instead of a volunteer, we would tell her to come help us, and so she would come to our support groups and kind of help. She's really quiet, would sit in the back, and she would just help us pass things. But she started listening to everything that we were talking about, tracking your symptoms, talking to your provider, how long have you had the pain, what's helping it, what's making it worse. And when she was around 7 when we started. At the age of 13, she was diagnosed with fibromyalgia. And she was able to get an early diagnosis compared to me in 2018. I was already, I mean, it was in long ago. So when she came to me and told me that she had pain, I knew that there was something wrong. And she came to me and she started telling me everything. And she learned everything during our support groups. And so she was able to get an early diagnosis because she felt empowered. She documented and she was able to advocate for herself. And I think that is the best way for me to kind of show you the impact that we're making and for these young adults to learn is by sharing. You hear someone share their story, their journey helps you prepare for your own journey. It empowers you to take action and to be able to, take that leap and say, you know what? I'm here for myself. And even if I have these conditions, I'm going to continue to thrive and just continue living. And really, that's what it's about. A diagnosis doesn't define who we are. It is simply a part of our story, a part of our journey. And we need to empower ourselves. We need to educate ourselves, but most importantly, support one another. And I think that's very important.
Wow, that was really well said. And I'm like, I'm gonna take this and use that as a quote. It sounded really good. But you're so right. It doesn't define who you are. It is kind of part of your story and your journey. And you answered my next question, which was an advice segment in relation to that on like how do you start getting involved and starting your journey. And I think that, you're in denial when you're first diagnosed. You're like, okay, where do I get the support? And the support group is like the next best thing, in my opinion, and from what I've been hearing from you, to get people started to just learn from others. And if they're scared of talking, hearing from other people, to then wanting to share their story and then learning how to advocate for themselves and then advocating for others and going through that cycle of like, I've gone from being in denial and just being diagnosed to now like empowering other people.
Yeah, and it's so interesting that you were talking about that because we've had, we're talking about mental health and how these conditions affect us, right? And like I've said, it doesn't define who we are, but it does affect us. And so we do go through these different phases of acceptance of, falling into that depression and being upset and then later on accepting, this is what my journey's going to be, this is what my life's going to be and then just fueling yourself with what I'm not giving up, I'm going to continue with this. So when you first get diagnosed with any condition or there's something that is changing in your life, you go through these different stages of grief. So you might go through denial, you might go through acceptance, and you'll go in different order. You might be very, depressed. And so I think it's very important to kind of highlight that we all go through this journey very differently, and we all will grieve who we were before our diagnosis, but know that that does not define who we are, right? So we will go through all these different phases, but also understanding you're not alone. There are so many people that are going through the same thing that you are, that are fighting the same battles that you are. And I think support groups are a great way to not only learn about, how you can help yourself, but sometimes what you say or you are sharing will help someone else. It's so important to know that, we all make a difference in our own way.
And they always say that in school, like, if you have a question, say it because someone else will learn from it. And it's kind of the same thing here. Like, if you have something to say, say it because someone else will take something from that and apply it to their own, like, diagnosis journey. So I think the same thing kind of goes hand in hand. And so I wanted to end off the podcast episode with an advice segment, but it's going to be a little bit different from what I was envisioning. What did you wish someone had told you about balancing your voice, your boundaries, and your health?
Wow. Okay. Well, first of all, before advocating, I wish someone would have told me the policymakers and legislators are human. There are people like you, and they are here and they work for you and they're here to support you. So I think that would have been so helpful because it's so intimidating to share your story and to go advocate for something that really is very meaningful to you. So that's the first thing. I wish somebody would have told me, um, you know, it's going to be okay. And sharing your story is going to not only help you, but help others. So boundaries for me, it has been very difficult. I wish someone would have, told me, you don't have to say yes all the time. You don't have to share your story every single time. So for me, being able to empower others to kind of create their story and let them see they also have a story to share allows me not to always be the only one sharing, but also empowering others. So to me, I wish someone would have told me, you know, come and join us, but also help us bring other voices to the table. And I think that's the most important thing is creating boundaries for you don't have to do this alone. You don't have to be the only one, and other people can share their stories and actually help everyone else.
Thank you so much, Estella, for sharing your story today. And, your work really reminds us that lived experience is definitely expertise, and that advocacy, self-empowerment, and community really changes a lot of people's lives. So for our listeners, we'll definitely link Looms for Lupus and Mata advocacy and support in the caption below so you can learn more, get involved, and access these resources. And if this episode resonated with you, please share it with someone who you think may need to hear it. And as always, remember that you're not alone. Like, comment, and subscribe. And thank you for listening to this week's episode on Take a Paycheck, and we'll see you all next time.
Thank you. Take a pain check for taking time to listening to our voices, supporting, and for collaborations because this is what it's all about. It's about working together to help everyone heal.